Hello readers, welcome back. Today I have a very special video for you. I'm going to be talking about Fangirl and a little bit about Carry On, both by Rainbow Rowell. I did actually complete an art piece on this, so if you want to see that, keep on watching. Be revealed a little bit later in the video. So diving right into our overview. Originally published in 2013, Fangirl follows a college freshman and fan fiction writer named Kath as she navigates independence and adulthood. The fan fiction Kath is writing is called Carry On Simon. It's based on a fictional series called Simon Snow, which is a not so subtle nod to Harry Potter. In Kath's version of the story, Simon and his school rival slash roommate fall in love. Rowell released a version of this story called Carry On in 2015, and it was the first in a trilogy of books about Simon Snow. Now to dive into the plot and pacing. When Kath moves into her freshman dorm room, she's feeling a bit overwhelmed, as she's never lived with anyone outside of her twin sister, and she's also worried about her dad, who struggles with manic and depressive episodes and will be living alone for the first time. The pacing of this novel starts off fast, but around the three-quarter mark it starts to drag a bit. Now to dive into the characters. So firstly, Kath, who we've already talked about a bit, she's a socially anxious fan fiction writer and our protagonist. Next we have Rin, who's Kath's twin sister. Rin is a bit more rebellious than Kath and is excited to venture out and try new things in college, sometimes to Kath's shock and even disapproval. Next we have Reagan, who's Kath's older, randomly assigned roommate who initially turns a cold shoulder to Kath. Then we have Levi, a friendly upperclassman who Kath meets through her roommate. Levi's constantly hanging out in Kath's room, and they become hesitant friends. Nick is an upperclassman in Kath's junior level fiction writing course and her bi-weekly recreational writing partner. Then we have to talk about Simon, who is a fictional character based on Harry Potter and the subject of Kath's fan fiction novel, Carry On Simon. Secondly, in the same vein, we also have Baz, who's a fictional character based on a combination of some of the Harry Potter characters. I think chiefly Draco Malfoy, his rival in those stories, and in Kath's fanfiction, he's the love interest of Simon Snow. Now to go into some of the themes. So firstly, finding yourself. Kath starts the story as an extremely socially anxious person, but throughout she learns how to find people who support and care about her, and how to express herself more clearly so that she can begin to embrace change and find joy in new places as well as where she already feels comfortable. I thought this was pretty relatable. The beginning of college is really tough because you're in a new setting. Everybody else there is new. You don't really know how to tell if people are being genuine, if people want to be your friend, and it can just be really kind of anxiety inducing experience overall. Which leads us into the topic of mental health. So specifically, Kath's dad actually suffers with mental health, and Kath spends a lot of the book worrying about him and how he's doing. While he does suffer in some ways, the author also shows that he's still a really loving parent and gives his daughters lots of support and attention. He's also able to hold down a steady job. He gets a lot of praise for his creativity and ingenuity in his work. And I thought this was important to highlight because in a lot of YA fiction specifically, I haven't really been seeing a mixed bag in terms of mental health. But here I felt like this really seems to depict a realistic version of the fact that people have good days, people have bad days, and you can be a flawed person, you can have mental illness, and you can still be good and caring and successful. I think this is important, especially for young people, to see more of instead of the potentially more prevalent negative representation that may be seen. Next, we have this idea of escapism. So Kath is always trying to escape her problems and in some ways even life itself by sitting in her room writing. She refuses to be sociable, she refuses to grow, and instead she wants to rely on her place of comfort to escape from reality. Through passages in this story, we actually get to read some of Kath's writing, and the more that the story progresses, the more I noticed similarities between the stories Kath was writing about and what we're actually seeing happen in her life at the same time. So for her, writing is an outlet to be able to express herself emotionally and what she's encountering in the real world. Now to talk about some of the good and bad elements. I really like the idea of the story, the characters, and the overall arc that's presented. Even though some of the elements can be a bit predictable or even cliche, it's still, for the most part, really fun and I felt invested throughout. One issue I did have with the story is I felt like it tended to drag a little bit and maybe was stretched a little bit too thin. I found myself thinking about three quarters through that some of the plot points should have already been wrapping up or wrapped up, and it felt like we were still in some ways kind of getting new exposition or starting to get into conflicts of exposition that had been presented much earlier in the story. This is kind of a trend I've noticed in the author's writing style. It's something I don't personally really love. I thought the same thing when I was reading Carry On, actually. But I have to say that the writing in Fangirl, in my opinion, seemed much more elevated than what I read in Carry On. So when I was reading Carry On, which was granted maybe a year or so ago, I remember thinking specifically how much to me it read like fan fiction and how much I didn't like that part of the story. After reading Fangirl, it makes sense because it's supposed to be a fan fiction story by Kath, our narrator in this story. And having gained that understanding through reading Fangirl, it made me want to actually go back and read Carry On again. And maybe I'd be a little bit more understanding and forgiving of what the story was trying to do. With this in mind, I would definitely suggest reading Fangirl prior to reading Carry On, although you wouldn't necessarily need to for context or exposition or anything like that. I think it would just give you a little bit more. You'd maybe be able to have a more enriched experience reading it if you understood the context of what Fangirl provided. Now to go into my final thoughts. So I actually really enjoyed Fangirl. I thought it was really fun, and for anybody who might want to read a YA novel about college-aged folks, about fan fiction, magic, any of those kinds of undertones or side plots, I think you would really enjoy the story. I know Carry On is super popular, but I haven't seen quite as much love for Fangirl. So really interested to see if as many folks have read this. If you have, let me know your thoughts. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you think similarly to me? Have you read Carry On as well? What do you think about that one? I only read the first book and I thought it was okay, but I might go read the other two, depending on what you guys say about them. Maybe you can convince me to go read those second two books in that trilogy. So I alluded to it a bit earlier in the intro of the video, but I also completed this piece that you should now be seeing on the screen. I was kind of excited when I was reading this story. I thought it was pretty cool, and especially the having read Carry On already, I knew a bit about Simon and Baz and kind of their adventures, but reading Fangirl, you get more context and a bit more story, and it's slightly different from the Carry On story. So I was just kind of excited and wanted to make this project. So I had a really great time making it. Let me know if you guys like it. I know it's probably pretty small on your screen. I need to think of a place to post it where it can be a bit higher resolution, but I'm not sure where yet. So let me know as well if you have any suggestions or ideas about where I can maybe post these for everybody to see in all of their glory. That's all I had for this video. Thank you as always so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.